I know. That's a very interesting title, isn't it? And so I appreciate all of you joining us. Listen, if this is your first time here, if you have any questions, remember always go to the description box first by clicking the word more on your cell phone, okay? It will expand. And when you're ready to comment, so that you can be sure that we all see your comment, make sure that you click the word view, and YouTube will automatically show you the 3 comment guidelines for our channel, because I do my best to follow the community guidelines of YouTube. That's just a safe thing to do. And so that'll kind of make things easy, okay? All right, settle in, get you something to drink. Let's go ahead and talk. So I first want to answer a question. Over the many, many months, even years ago when I was discussing my opinion on Torre and how, in my opinion, he targeted Sarah, over and over and over, I would have people in the comments say, but why is it even important to talk about this? You know, who cares what Jakes in his ministry or whatever is doing? There are greater things to be discussed. And I agree with that. You know, there are greater things to be discussed, not just in the world, but also in our own personal lives, right? But they're all, you know, there are different types of news to be discussed. And the great thing about YouTube is that there are millions of channels on a million different things. And so sometimes you have to just go where they're discussing the things that you feel are more important to be discussed. What I don't do, I don't go into Starbucks expecting it to be Lowe's, meaning I'm not going to get the things I need. I need to go to Lowe's, right? And so sometimes I find that as adults, we just like to crab and complain. We're not going to go nowhere. We're not going to go to Lowe's. We're just going to sit in Starbucks and complain about why I can't find my hammer, right? We don't sell hammers. We only sell drinks and pastries, etc. Okay? So let me revisit that answer to that question. The reason that this is such an important topic, in particular in the Black community, is because at one time, T.D. Jakes was the #1 Black preacher in America. At one time, his church, the Potter's House Church, was one of the largest mega churches in America. Also, at one time, that labeled him the next Billy Graham. He was on the cover of Time magazine. But this man did things in modern ministry that no other preacher in his day had done. And so, to have seen it then to what it is now, there's a lot to be learned from that. And so it's not really a willy-nilly type thing, you know, to just say it's not worth paying attention to. It is, because every ministry, everybody who was up, every ministry, sometimes these ministries end disastrously, and then sometimes it continues on in a very successful and more robust, helpful way. And right now, the jury is still out on how this is going to end or how it will continue. And so that's why I'm following it. But I understand there are more important things to be discussed. And again, we just have to go to Lowe's for our hammer, right? That's what we have to do. So let's talk about the latest update. Well, Serita Jakes preached today at the Potter's House in Dallas. Her parents were there supporting her. Her husband, Torre, was there. Her siblings were there. Several other family members were there. Remember, the last time she preached, this was just a few days before her spinal surgery. And so I will tell you, it was really great for me to see that she's doing okay. You know how they say, two things can be true at the same time. I like to also say, we can do two things at the same time. We can be compassionate towards another human being while speaking what we believe is the truth about that person. My goal is never to be harmful, in my opinion, and I'm not. I'm never harmful. And I know some people say, oh no, just because you don't like something I've said doesn't mean it was harmful, right? Remember, there's a distinction between something immoral versus something we just don't like, right? And so I'm always cautious because I recognize these people could be listening. And I wouldn't ever want to click on a video where someone's discussing me and they are just tearing me down, having nicknames for me, all the stuff that sometimes we do when we dehumanize people, when we don't see them as being like us, meaning people with feelings and problems and highs and lows, right? So it was good for me to see her. I'm happy for her because according to what they told us, and I'm going to go by what they said, according to what they said, the doctor told her in regards to her fall on the trampoline, had the break in your neck been 1 inch above, you would have died. 1 inch below, you would have been paralyzed for the rest of your life. For her being a 38-year-old mother who's still raising a kid, who should have a bright future ahead of her, several more decades to go, that was a very daunting thing, I'm sure, to hear. And so to see her up today was a God thing for me. I'm happy for her. I'm happy for her children. I can only imagine being a child and you're not sure what's going to happen to your mom. There are a lot of you listening in the audience. You had your mother pass away or have a deadly illness when you were very young, and so you know what it's like to not have a mom or to lose your mom at an early age. And so we should never wish that or want that for anybody, right? No matter how much I disagree with the theology and the teaching and the practices of these people, I remember they're just like me. And so I wish them no ill. I wish Sarah no ill. Doing two things at the same time, I'm also going to share exactly what I think is the truth from my vantage point, at least, about what I see happening publicly. So that's the first thing. Great to see her. Hope she continues. The next thing I will say is that it was really good seeing her parents' love for her, and that was very evident in their faces today. I think all parents, no matter who they are, no matter what they have, they want to see their children happy, healthy, and whole. And so it was good to see them there supporting her. And they know much better than we do what her healing journey has been like. And so I'm sure that this was, a blessing for them to be able to sit and see that she's there. The worst thing for a parent is for your child to die before you, or for them to have some tragic accident that incapacitates them for the remainder of their days. And you have to live out the remainder of your days seeing your child in agony, pain, or trauma. So this was a great day for them all, I think, in terms of that, right? As I was watching the service today, it was difficult. It was difficult for me to watch. Let me rephrase that. It was difficult for me to listen because I believe before you speak about something, before you give your comment, you need to listen, watch from start to finish so that you can hear everything, see everything in full context. I am training myself to slow down. And if I don't have time to watch it all, listen to it all, I don't have nothing to say about it. That's where I'm training myself. And so I had to start and stop because she wasn't really talking about nothing. And I understand that she comes from a preacher, and her dad definitely had a gift at one time. But, that didn't get past to her, And so it's difficult watching her listening to her trying to piece together something for the people in the crowd. And at various points I wondered, what is she talking about? At other points I, said, okay, I'm gonna try to follow her, and maybe I'm missing something, and then I realize I'm not missing a thing, right? And so I think it's very difficult when you're up doing something you probably shouldn't be doing, or that you definitely don't have a gifting to do. And all of us know that there's a difference between a gifting and a talent. But as far as I'm concerned, she doesn't even have a talent for it. She doesn't have a talent to communicate in such a way. Now, you could be communicating to your friends and be 1,000% great. But communicating to a crowd and trying to get something over, that's a whole different thing. And what happens with Sarah is what happens with anybody who's up trying to teach or preach or whatever, and they really shouldn't be doing it, is it all comes back down to emotionalism. That's all they can rely on, is hyping up the crowd. And when I say hyping up the crowd, I don't mean like the rap concert, hyping up the crowd, wave your hands in the air. No. I just mean everything comes down to highly emotional. Get the people yelling and screaming and dancing and running and shouting, because people aren't, and if you saw the service today, if you've seen any of her services, I assume, it all ends the same way. And I guess for some people, they say, well, that's just church and that's just God. Well, no, it's not church. It's what church has become. It's the substitute for the brass, the brass for the gold. That's what it is. I wonder if those people would feel like they'd heard anything if there were no musicians up there and she just spoke in a normal voice like I'm speaking to you, the way Jesus taught. We do recognize that Jesus never screamed and yelled when he was teaching or preaching. He just sat in a boat and taught. See, it calls for a whole different type of Christian who can sit and listen to something. And I will tell you, most people who are used to all that went on over there, the musicians and my goodness, and the yelling and the screaming and all that, if they were in front of someone who just sat and taught them, they would find it quite boring, because they don't have the emotional high that goes along with all the music and the drums and the piano and it's the brass for the gold. Because emotionalism doesn't lead to change, y'all. That's why every Sunday they got to preach the same type of messages. People are broken, and you're going to bring them from their brokenness up to a high emotional state. And I'm getting ahead of myself. So it was difficult for me to listen to her. It was difficult. It's very difficult. And I don't say, I don't give my opinion about her lack of a gift or even a talent to get up and do what she's trying to do to be harmful. I'm just simply telling you, she ain't got it. And I don't mean she didn't have an anointing. I'm sure she has an anointing in some other area. We all do. But this right here is just not it. When a person has to rely on yelling and screaming and all that, it's kind of like they say about comedy. When a comedian has to rely on his jokes or him making fun of the crowd or cursing, he's not really a comic. She's not really a comic. And so it was very difficult. I can't tell you how difficult it was. There's something that I don't understand, and now I'm going to get to what you saw in the title. You know, one of the things I learned when I used to work with people is that everybody responds to traumatic events in their life very differently. And I'll never forget when I really began to learn this. There came a client that I had who had become very ill, and I, along with her family and everyone else who was connected to the situation, the case, and all that, we expected once she got out of the hospital that she would change her ways, right? But contrary to all of our hopes, she continued exactly the way she was. Prior to that, I had seen people have traumatic situations in their family and their body and their lives, and it was a wake-up call for them. And they actually made changes, and those changes were lasting. When I was watching Sarah's sermon today, I realized something. She hasn't changed. The accident that was definitely traumatic. I mean, I've seen her Instagram videos where she showed the scars, a very traumatic situation. Unfortunately, from what I can see today, that accident didn't change the way she makes decisions in terms of herself, in terms of decision makings about her. Now, it may have changed something about the way she's going to mother, the way she's going to sister, the way she's going to wife. But in terms of her, there was no change. And that was evident today. And one of the ways that we know that a person has been deeply transformed on the inside after a traumatic event is they do change. And that change is evident in the smallest things. So I'm going to bring up something very small today that's evidence the change didn't happen. Now, that doesn't mean it wasn't traumatic, what she went through. But what it means is, for whatever reasons, maybe she was worried about Woman Evolve. Maybe she was worried about how we're going to get the money for such and such. That her mind was on other things other than a deep transformation of, I need to change the way I'm living. Okay, so let me show it to you. So she told us that on June 17th, she had her spinal surgery for all her disc in her back. Prior to that, she had already had surgery on her neck. And she had been in a neck brace for weeks. We saw it, right? We saw her on Instagram, her mama helping her and all this kind of a thing. Okay, well, we, according to her, learned what caused this accident. She was playing around with her daughter on a trampoline. Now, we all know what the stats are about trampolines. If you don't, you can look it up. But we recognize that trampolines are not more dangerous than cars, driving a car. Driving a car every day is more dangerous than jumping on a trampoline. However, I've pointed this out before. In my research on their family, I've seen their Instagram videos. That's where my research starts and stops. I don't go digging around in people's personal lives. I'm just not that kind of blogger. It's not my nature. Now, if something is public, it's already out there, that's different. Well, then I'm just going to read whatever's public. But I'm not going to go searching and digging. I just feel like for me, that's going too far. Well, in the Instagram videos that they upload for everybody to see, Sarah is very playful, and there's nothing wrong with that. Laughter is good. It's good as an adult to remain playful, right? It keeps the miracle of life evident to you when you can laugh and have fun, and you don't take yourself or life too seriously. However, we can be very irresponsible in the ways we have fun. I mean, we see it all the time. We see it all the time. People become very irresponsible. And so I told you guys, based on some of the videos I had seen, I don't doubt that she was acting a fool on the trampoline, and that's how she got hurt. Meaning she went too far with whatever she was doing, and she hurt herself, unfortunately. Okay, well, that was a decision to act a fool to a certain degree on the trampoline, causing a serious injury. Well, she's been through all these surgeries and all this kind of a thing, and yet here we are. She's just a few weeks outside of her surgery, and what I saw today tells me no change really occurred with her. Why are we wearing, after spinal surgery, why are we in high heels? It's dangerous, it's unwise. It could cause severe re-injury. It's not just the heels. It was the wide leg pants of the flowy material where she could not see where she was walking. And if you saw the video live stream today, several times in order to see where she was walking, she had to lift up the pants to keep the heels from being caught on the material. Y'all, a healing spine requires stability. And wearing high heels with those types of pants is severely dangerous. It wasn't just that. She was jumping up and down in the heels, in the pants. I think a lot of us, because we're not kids, we've forgotten that jumping actually sends compression waves directly up and down our spinal column. See, right after spinal surgery, the kind of surgery she had, the vertebrae disc, the disc, even the surgical hardware, like she talked about the screws and stuff, all that stuff is still very vulnerable. So jumping up and down is called force. It's a jarring force. And it can cause a fracture. It can cause the tissue that's healing to be lacerated. I sat back and wondered, like, who on earth would have let her come out there like that? You see, it tells me nothing that happened to her changed her at her core. Again, remember, I'm talking about her, how she lives, not how she's going to parent, how she's going to sister, how she's going to wife, how she's going to daughter, how she's going to be with the folks at the church. Her. Well, they got a stylist. You know, a lot of people have stylists. But who determines ultimately what we put on? Is it our stylist or is it us? Come on, folks. We're all grown. A stylist can bring to you 11 outfits, but you choose. I choose. Remember I was telling you guys about how dangerous high heels are? Really, period, but especially when you just have spinal surgery, because high heels, y'all, they force our pelvis to tilt forward, which drastically alters our center of gravity. I was sitting there thinking to myself, whoever the stylist is needs to be fired for even suggesting the outfit. Well, who knows? Maybe she chose it herself. I don't know. So you just had all these surgeries. Everything is still quite vulnerable in your body. Things are still healing. And you are willing to walk out in heels that you can't see where you're walking because you've got on this flowy, wide leg material. If the heel got caught the wrong way, you fall, you re-injure yourself, and then you become paralyzed. Something so simple as the outfit told me everything I needed to know. I said, she hasn't changed. Even though it seemed, according to them, it was such a terrible situation, when it comes to how Sarah's going to live, it didn't change her. It didn't change her. She's still making unwise decisions. See, that whole outfit was unwise. Acting a fool on the trampoline, unwise. You see, sometimes when we're looking to know whether someone has changed or not, we look at the big things. But really, we need to be looking at the small things. Now, a part of me today, when I was thinking all of this, I thought, well, I don't want to say the folks were lying about it. I mean, I saw the scars on her neck. They were there. And I saw her dad wheeling her out of the hospital. So I don't want to, fall victim to conspiracy theories that they made all this up. But it just makes no sense. And no matter how quickly you've healed, have any of you guys ever heard that you can lose your healing? God can do a miraculous work in our lives and we can lose it. God can enable us to get a house, get a car, get a job, and we can lose it through our own actions. It's the same way healing works. God can start a good work in our body, but if we don't change, if I don't change, if you don't change, if Sarah doesn't change, we create the same type of environment that caused the problem in the first place. You see, by knowing that you're going to have to be up there for at least an hour and a half, and by the choice of outfit, it shows this is how she's still making decisions despite coming out of something that, according to them all, was so almost deadly, almost paralyzing, but definitely traumatic. I understand wanting to look cute, but looking cute should never cost us possibly our lives or our health. Where was the wise person to say, you're a few weeks outside of your surgery? Remember, this surgery went on June 17th. Healing takes 6 to 8 weeks, sometimes longer. She's just on the tail end of that, y'all. So why wasn't mama or daddy wise enough to say, honey, or tell the stylist, suggest another cute outfit where she can wear flats, and Sarah, you're not going to jump up and down? I remember, this was 1,000 years ago, there was a minister. He had some heart trouble. And according to him, the doctor told him his heart trouble stemmed from all the years of screaming and yelling in the pulpit, right? People who got a mic in their hand and yet they still screaming and yelling. Instead of letting the mic do the work for them, just talking to the mic and turn the volume up. That's all you got to do, right? Well, according to him, God was healing him, right? And so he got back in the pulpit with all his screaming and hollering, had a deadly heart attack. Not in the pulpit, but after a service, died. You see, when we don't change our ways, what did I say? We create the same environment that caused the problem in the first place. So let me tell you something. And I'm going to say this not because I have a crystal ball, not because of anything other than I've lived long enough to know and to see how life works, and some of you have too. It won't be long, y'all, and she'll have some other accident. I don't say that to wish that upon her. I say that because when we don't change, we're recreating the same issue. We're recreating the same circumstances that got us in trouble in the first place. So there are a million cute outfits, right, that are safe for someone who just had spinal surgery, a major surgery just a few weeks ago. And the fact that nobody, no sister, no brother, no mama, no daddy, no stylist, no friend, no husband had enough common sense even to say, you're not wearing that. Take the heels off, take the pants off, put on something where you can see where you're walking, where you won't trip and fall, where there's no trip hazard, no fall hazard. And for sure, you're not going to jump up and down, jarring your spine. For those of you who don't understand what jumping does and why jumping can be dangerous, you need to look it up. Jumping is great. It clears the lymphatic system, but there's a way to jump. But for sure, you're not going to be jumping when you just had spinal surgery and neck surgery. See, wasn't she jumping and acting a fool on the trampoline? So see, Sarah this didn't change her in the way that it should have, in the way that's going to be long-lasting and make a major impact on her life. It won't be long, guys, and there'll be some other incident with Sarah. Unless she hears this podcast and makes a change. Other than that, I just don't see it happening. I just see it'll be a few months and we'll hear something else went on with her. Because this young lady is behaving in such an unwise manner. And the fact that nobody said anything, it defies common sense to me. And I know her parents love her. I know her sister and her brother love her. So I have to then say, either it wasn't as bad as y'all are telling us it was, and y'all really were exaggerating, or this young lady needs to go to therapy. Well, she says she's in therapy. She needs to get a new therapist who can say to her, what's wrong? Well, you can't say to somebody what's wrong with you, but you can definitely say what is going on with you that would even make you think this is okay to do when your body is still healing. Now, finally, I want to talk about Torre. So the last update, I was sharing with you guys his last message when he was at One LA. He'll be back over there, I think, either next week or the week after next. And we talked about him talking about September, right? And I likened it to what the politicians always talk about, the October surprise, right? Everybody knows something's going to happen in October, but nobody knows exactly what is this going to be. We just know it's going to be a surprise. I think Torre understands that in terms of being a major player anymore at the Dallas campus is pretty much done for now. Oh, Wednesday is great, but Wednesday is not where the crowd is, right? And Wednesday is not where they're going to take up their large offerings. Those are always done on a Sunday, in a Sunday service, because that's when most people go to church. Most people work during the week and they have children who got to go to school the next day or whatever, and people work night shift, and so not everyone is going to show up on a Wednesday, Tuesday, or however, whatever day they have their midweek Bible study. But if you guys notice, we haven't seen Torre on a Sunday at the Potter's house in a few weeks. He's been going back and forth to LA. Well, I think it's safe to say now, seeing as the Wednesday Bible study, which they call Walk It Out Wednesday, Cora, who I did not know was a pastor, I'm like, what? When they introduced her, and again, you can see all these services on their website and also on their YouTube channel. And again, whoever their social media manager is, he or she or they, sometimes they upload things right after Wednesday night service and sometimes right after Sunday service or sometimes later. It just depends. Generally speaking, I think these places try to have a predictable schedule, but I don't know. I don't know. Sometimes maybe their services go longer than necessary, or maybe there are edits. I don't know. But the bottom line is, they are telling Dexter he is a pastor in training. And if you were with me last Sunday, the Sunday before last, rather, I talked about he appeared to be in training. The way he was watching his father, I thought, he seems to be really in training. And now to hear them call him that, I don't know, I don't know why that would be, I think for what this church needs, I don't know if putting someone in a position of pastor who has no experience and is very dangerous, but it is a desperate decision. And now they're calling it God. And you know what? I am not going to say that it's definitely not, because first of all, for me, the only way from the outside looking in that we can determine that something definitely isn't God is if the person is in some sort of sin or they're encouraging people to sin. We can clearly see that's against the scripture, like Torre's little mess on his little tired book tour. God told him to divorce his wife, right? Wasn't for adultery, wasn't no scandal. Well, what was it, brother? He can't say. But except God just told him, right? But when it comes to whether God told somebody to do something or not, the only people who really know that is the person and God, right? But now the fruit of it will be evident, and that takes time. It takes time to see the fruit of a person's decisions, right? And so I just think it's very interesting that when Torre was scheming and planning, and that's what he did, in my view, my opinion, he never factored in Dexter, because I am sure that girl told him, Dexter doesn't want to preach. He never wants to be a part of this. I mean, Dexter had a blog, y'all have heard him talk about it, where he would just blast his parents. Now, he wouldn't call them names or anything like that, but he would just say stuff like, I'm not going to live off the name. Like, he was very open in the fact that he never wanted to ever have anything to do with ministry in the traditional sense. So you can imagine someone who's scheming and planning on a takeover, they don't factor that person in because they don't see them as a threat. They don't see them as I don't even need to be concerned about him. But now it turns out him is the one that they're now replacing you with, because, from what we saw in the transition service that happened a year ago, Torre and Sarah were made the senior pastors. And Jakes and his wife were kind of supposed to be like overseeing, but not the way they have been consistently involved. It's as if they never left. And that's not what a true transition is, and I think most of us know that. I mean, if you're like me and you follow what's been going on with Disney, Walt Disney and ABC, boy, oh boy, it's been a mess over there. Because Bob Iger, who's now finally retired, but Bob Iger was the CEO of Walt Disney. Okay, he kept saying, I'm going to retire. And then he brought in this other guy, okay, whose also name was Bob, who worked for Walt Disney, but he was over the theme parks. They put him in Bob's position. Bob was supposed to go home. Well, they made things so hard for that other Bob, right? And come to find out, Bob Iger was still pulling strings from his home, from his bedroom. And so they made it very difficult for this man to even be a leader. Well, he wound up having to be investigated and step down, and Bob came back out of retirement. Then Bob was supposed to train up somebody else. Bob just didn't want to go home. And finally, it seemed like the shareholders said, okay, enough is enough of this back and forth. Go home, stay home, get you a check, and let us do this. And so that's what's happening now. But it happens like that in ministry too. Sometimes the people who founded these ministries, they don't want to take their hands off of it. And we can understand that, I mean, especially if you see it as a part of your legacy. Now, I believe legacy is all the people's lives that you've touched. I don't believe legacy is a building. I don't believe legacy is a bank account. I don't even believe legacy is a library, which I think people should leave libraries to their children. Like, this is information that will help you in your life. Why should you have to reinvent the wheel, right? But, you know, a legacy is every person whose life you changed. And none of us will know that number until we get to the other side. But if you do see it, and they obviously do, and we can understand it, that they see all this stuff as a part of their legacy, we can understand why he doesn't want to let it go. Especially if it's not stable, right? So I am so happy for Lori, because for all his scheming and all of that, in my opinion, he schemed and scammed. He winds up right back where he started from, y'all. If we can't learn nothing from that, y'all, I don't know. If we can't see that trying to do stuff underhanded never really works. And that's what I see. This man left his wife and children for another woman, in my opinion. And it wasn't for her, it was for what her father had. And I believe he targeted her. She was a young woman. She was very vulnerable. She had just gotten divorced from a terrible guy who cheated on her and was, I mean, just mean, nasty. And then here comes this guy. She had been newly divorced, and he rushes in, and much older than her. That girl was raised in the South. This man was from LA. And unfortunately, I don't think she had anyone around her who was spiritual enough to see. Not him. He don't marry him. Same thing with Cora, we talked about that. People say, well, why couldn't Jakes and Serita, they mean, Jakes and them see through Torrey? Well, they didn't see through Brandon. And you mean to tell me, for all the stuff you claim God's going to talk to you about, he didn't tell you your daughter's about to marry a man who's going to molest your granddaughter? Oh, come on, folks. We know better than that. These people don't hear from God. They do not hear from God. Or we should say it this way. The things that matter, they don't hear from God on that. So no. Just like the heels and stuff today. You see, you can see the same pattern with them, like I was telling you guys with her. The same thing. So you had a son-in-law, and Jake's married Cora and Brandon. What? You didn't see that? When you were standing up there reading all that stuff? Having them repeat the vows, you didn't see nothing? God didn't say a word to you? We learned from Torrey during his interview with Lecrae that Jakes met with him before he married Sarah, and they talked. So God didn't say anything. God didn't explain to you. God didn't reveal to you that this man targeted your daughter. And when you put all Torrey's actions on a timeline, you can see how strategic he was. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. In my opinion, he targeted her. Now, that's just my opinion. My opinion is not a fact. My opinion doesn't mean it's true. It just is what I think happened. And so, as I get ready to let you go, for all his scheming and scamming, he winds up right back where he started, y'all. Can you imagine the humiliation for him, but also the jubilance for his wife? Because I do believe he did her wrong. And I believe that God has had complete strangers fighting her on her behalf. We don't know this girl. We don't know Lori. And we've been able to say things that she hasn't been able to say. Well, she said it in her court documents, but you understand, I mean publicly. Yeah, God will have complete strangers speak the truth of what you went through for you. Because I don't know, if she signed paperwork saying she would never talk about it publicly so she can keep getting her check every month, she may have done that for the sake of her children. I don't know. But what I do know is what I'm seeing, for all of that, wind up right back where you started from. And, and it looks to me like you're on the outs. The family, like, okay, somebody said in the comments the last time I was sharing this, they said they wouldn't be surprised if some years down the line Torrey and Sarah get divorced. Well, I would hope they wouldn't. I mean, they're already married now. I mean, it's a done deal. But I will say that, well, as I said before, listen, when it comes to money, Jake's gonna keep an eye on that. And so if they had to pay Torrey off to keep him quiet and have him sign an NDA, that's what would happen. Because Torrey, he has loose lips. I mean, we know that just watching his book tour. But even the stuff he was saying to those people a few Sundays ago at his church in LA, he let slip that something was coming in September. He wasn't supposed to be talking about that. Just like the stuff he said about, Carmelo. And then he had to come back and clean that up. Torrey is not, Torrey don't know how to just shut up and walk in a single file. Yeah. So he's pretty much useless. So if they do get divorced, well, that wouldn't be no surprise. But, if he feels that they're pushing him out, which is what it looks like to me, y'all, they're doing. Pushing him out, pushing him out, pushing him out, slowly but surely. Well, he's the kind of man, he would run his mouth and talk about it. Unless he was paid not to talk about it. And a man like that, who went through all the crap he did to get where he is right now, it's all about money for him. And he would require a payment to keep his mouth closed. So as I get ready to let you go, I'm happy to see that she's, on the mend, but I really was disappointed to see that at the core of her, in terms of how she's living, none of it has changed. Because if it had, there would be no way. Because see, how we dress, y'all, these are decisions we're making. And nobody considered this girl's health in this outfit. Nobody who loved her could have influenced her to not wear it. Of course they could have, had they been thinking about it. So I have to conclude, either things really weren't as bad as they say, because this stuff defies common sense I'm seeing this girl do, or it was as bad as they said. But yet everybody is in such a fog. And in regards to her, the accident just didn't change her on a core and a deep level enough for her to even make a decision about wearing something different in the wake of having come out of major spinal surgery. I don't know a doctor in the world who would tell somebody a few weeks coming out of a spinal surgery to wear heels, to wear fabrics like she was wearing, to wear wide leg pants like she was wearing, where she literally could not see where she was walking, and several times had to keep her heel from being caught on the fabric, and then tell them to jump up and down. There's not a doctor anywhere. And ain't no doctor told her either. And those are my thoughts on the latest, and I'll talk to you on the next one. Bye, guys.